I like to look at the gap now as information. Like, what is this gap revealing about me? So instead of thinking that the gap is a problem, think of what is it revealing to you and about you? Where does this get to show you where you don't trust yourself? Where are you still seeking outside validation or certainty? Where do you say you trust God and have faith, but not really when it comes down to it? Welcome back to Your Money, Your Rules podcast. Today, I want to talk about something that I'm currently experiencing. I have experienced multiple times. I'm sure if you're listening to this podcast, this has also occurred within you as well, because if you're running a business, if you're going after things that you want in your life, going for your dreams and your goals, you're going to experience this. And that is something called the gap. Some people call it the messy middle, the in-between, whatever you want to refer to it as. But for this episode, we'll refer to it as the gap. It's the place where you have let go of who you were, of the old identity of who you were, and where you are moving towards hasn't fully arrived yet. So let's dive in. So let's talk about wanting to escape the gap, because I think that this is natural. This is what humans do. We don't like being in the gap. We don't like how it feels in our body. And the gap is that space between what I call, it's the difference between what the 3D world, if you were to look at, let's just say your P&L or your revenue. If you were to look at your 3D numbers, they don't represent where you are going, that 5D, right? The 3D hasn't yet caught up with the 5D, right? You have become someone new. You have a new identity. You are taking action from that new place. And the results, or the 3D world, the numbers in the bank account, the revenue, the body, whatever it might be that you're working on, hasn't yet come to fruition yet. And because a lot of us aren't used to feeling this way or don't like the way that it feels in our body, we want to do something to make it go away. So I want you to think about, and this, what I'm going to list off here is you could do some of these things. You could do all of them. You could do one of them. I just thought about some of the things that I used to do. I've gotten a lot better at this. I'm not perfect. Like I said, I'm currently in this right now. And I recognized I think it was yesterday, I messaged a friend and I was like, I'm sitting here and I'm in the gap. And I'm just being really compassionate and loving with myself, because it's sometimes I think you just get to a point where you're like, what else can you do? So think about, what are your go-tos when it comes to being in the gap? Do you go to overworking? Do you get, and I'm air quoting, busy? Do you take a course or think you need to hire somebody else, or maybe even an employee, or hire another mentor or advisor? Do you start making impulsive or fast, quick decisions? Do you start feeling doubt? Do you get pulled back to the familiar and what you're used to doing? Are you a social media scroller? Do you zone out and watch Netflix or Apple TV? One of the things that I noticed I used to do when I was in the gap is I would message my friends. Yes, I did say I messaged my friend last night, but we were already kind of talking about back and forth some other things, and I was just sharing with her. But what I recognized a couple of years ago is I would be in the gap and then I would want to text my friends to kind of share what I was going through. But it was coming from this place of like, I don't like this feeling in my body. Please give me some certainty. Let me take some certainty for you so I can feel secure and safe and certain about what's going on. Like, I was seeking their validation, their support, because I hadn't yet built that and anchored that into with my own self and my own being. And I think a lot of us, mistake that this discomfort, this uneasy feeling that we are feeling in our body is a sign that something has gone wrong, or maybe, there's some thread or belief here of like, this is not okay. And I think some of our most deepest potent work that we can do as business owners, as visionaries, is to get really comfortable with being in the gap. It's like, let me just pull up this chair and let me just settle in and let me just get really comfortable with being where we are or where I am. Because from what I have experienced, and for my clients, as long as you are running a business, as long as you have these big, bold ideas, as long as you are creating the life that you want, you're going to experience the gap. And I think what I've learned is that we are actually going to experience the gap more often. Like I've noticed the gap is getting, or I should say like the time between my up levels are getting faster and faster and faster, because the more action you take, the more that you really start to focus inward and you start really, like, where do I need to let this go? And where do I need to let that go? I think a lot of times with manifestation people teach you is like, what do you want to feel? And one of the things that I really started to think about when I was in Rosemary Beach was, what do I need to let go of? Like, God, just keep showing me, what do I need to let go of? Because that's really where what we're going to see, right? That the growth that we are going to see. Yes, it's great to like be in the vibration of gratitude and having and all of those higher vibration emotions. Yes. And also, like, I think sometimes it's also important to ask God, like, what do I need to let go of? Because it's those limiting beliefs as well. It's those things that are kind of holding us back or are slowing us down from moving towards what we want. So I like to look at the gap now as information. Like, what is this gap revealing about me? So instead of thinking that the gap is a problem, think of what is it revealing to you and about you? Where does this get to show you where you don't trust yourself? Where are you still seeking outside validation or certainty? Where do you say you trust God and have faith, but not really when it comes down to it? I think a lot of us, say, I trust God, I have faith, but it's easy to have faith when you have plenty of money in your bank account. Right? It's easy to have faith when everything is going exactly the way you want to in your business. It's easy to have faith when your body's doing exactly what it needs to do. Really having faith, really having certainty in your connection with yourself and with God comes in those obstacles or those challenging moments, or when the 3D world isn't matching up with what you know to be true about yourself and who you are. So, where are you seeking external validation? Where is your attachment to certainty outside of yourself? And when I say certainty, what I mean is not to the outcome, right? We don't have certainty in the outcome, but we have to have certainty in who we are, and that no matter what, we're going to be okay. I'm going to be loving and kind to myself. I'm going to take care of myself. I'm going to trust God no matter what. Like, that's the certainty, the internal certainty, not the external certainty. Where is this revealing your fears? Where is this revealing some maybe of your coping mechanisms or the patterns that you typically go to when you are in the gap? And you're not able to see this stuff. Maybe sometimes you might, when you aren't in the gap, but I think the gap really starts to show us what are some of those beliefs that we have about ourselves. What are those go-to, like one of mine that still pops up is like, there's something wrong with me. Like, that is an underlying belief that I keep coming back to. And I have to, it's just like, I just keep working on that belief at a new level. So really start thinking about, if you were to look at the gap as a gift instead of that there's something wrong here, like, what would change? Would you stop trying to rush and get out of it? Would you settle in more? Would you allow it to be there so that you can really feel more peace and understanding with where you are? So let's talk about, how do we support ourselves while we're in the gap? Like, I think all of us as women, one of the things that our souls came here to do is to love ourselves at such a deeper level. I don't think I've had any client yet, including myself, who hasn't had an interesting relationship with her mom. And I think we are the first generation of women who are doing this for ourselves and then teaching it to our children as well, is this sense of unconditional love for ourselves, that no matter what, we're going to be here for ourselves, and we're going to love ourselves, and we're going to support ourselves no matter what. So how do we support ourselves in the gap? How do we get comfy? How do we just like anchor in and settle down into it? I think this is where we can slow down even more instead of speed up, right? Instead of going to that fight or flight, how can we even slow down even more? How can we take care of our nervous system and regulate it even more? How can we ask different and discerning questions to understand what's going on and to see where we are maybe experiencing similar patterns or whatever that might be? Where have we become maybe disconnected? And so how can we support ourselves? Maybe it's through prayer. Maybe it's, whatever your routine is with being connected with God. How can you take that relationship even deeper? How can you create even a closer connection that you have with God? How can you stay even more connected with your body and your intuition and not making fear-based decisions? And that comes back to like slowing down, right? Anytime that you are in a rush, we know that that is coming from the mind. It's coming from fear. It's not coming from certainty and unconditional love and growth. And also I think that when you start to ponder, and this can go back to like journaling, as well as you can put this in your journal, but like remember the gaps that you've been in. What was your process? I think it's really important to kind of, because awareness starts at after the fact. And then, the more aware you become, it happens kind of in the middle of when the thing is actually happening. And then your awareness can get to the place where before it even happens, like before you actually say what you want to say to your spouse, you shut your mouth and you actually think about what do you actually want to say. And so that's where awareness happens. And I think that the more that we can become aware of our patterns, of our processes, of how do we support ourselves while we're in it. So if you can recognize, what did I do the last time that I was in the gap? And how did I move through it? And what was my process like? And, even like I've even started to pay attention to like how, not necessarily how long as in days, but a little bit of like, how long did it take for that clarity to come for me to like, when was I a little bit of wishy-washy? And then how long did that wishy-washy take? And then that I moved out of that, things like that, just getting really specific with yourself to figure out so that when it does come up again, you have some things that you can go to. So you're not having to, because I do think when we are in the gap and we're not aware, we are in, an unregulated state. And so when you can get back to that regulated state and you can see like, oh, okay, this is what I typically did. I would outsource or I would, text friends. But this time when I have that urge, I'm not going to do it. Just noticing what are those things that you go to so that when it comes time for the gap again, that you change your behavior. And I think, like I said, this is our opportunity. The gap is our opportunity to go deeper and have a deeper connection with God and with ourselves, and to love ourselves even more, to get more intimate with ourselves, with our business, with our team, just like, how can we take this even deeper? And I think that with the gap, like I remember when I was in therapy, when I was getting divorced from my first husband, and she told me, she was like, Erin, there's no getting around this. There's no skipping this. Like the only way out is through. And that always stuck with me. And I feel like that this is the way that the gap is. It's like, this is the price that we are going to pay in order to have what we want. Like the gap is part of the process. So we might as well get comfy. We might as well embrace it. We might as well let it teach us what we need to learn while we are there. Like there is no skipping. There is no going around or, quickly going through it. And I will say, if you do quickly go through it, you're going to be back there learning it again, because the lesson will continue to show up for us until we are ready to receive it and to transform it and to transcend it. So think about over the next week, like, when was the last time that you were in a gap? What did it feel like? What were the things that you were trying to do or to move away from so that you didn't have to feel it? I remember I was telling a client, we were talking about some of the changes that we were making in our business. And she said, Erin, this feels really hard. And I said, it only feels hard right now. Like, yes, I validated her. I was like, yes, of course it does. Right. But the reason why it feels really hard is because we just haven't been accustomed and we haven't yet anchored into like, this is just part of the process. If we were just to say, you know what, in order to get to where we're going, we're always going to have a gap. Like people don't talk about this part, right? Like they talk about, having the business that we want or the life that we want. But a lot of people aren't talking about like the gap. This is where things are made. This is where our soul transforms, or however you want to say it, that we become someone new. It's like a snake shedding its skin. Like this is the process. And so if we can get really comfortable with being where we are here in the gap, like where we're going is like the cherry on top. So think about this over the next week. Think about what is your process that you are? What do you do when you're in the gap? What do you want to try to avoid or resist or move away from? Or, what are your go-tos that you try to do? And then how do you want to support yourself moving forward? So you know that the gap's going to come again. Anytime you want to up level in your business, anytime you're changing things within your team or your advisors, your marriage, your children, like it's just part of it. So what are the things that you want to do to support yourself so that you can be there for yourself when the gap comes again? Okay, I will see you in the next episode.